Welcome everyone. Welcome to Kind Body. We're so happy to have a moment to share with you guys. We have two of our amazing patients here with us that are going to be sharing their stories, and we're going to just dive in deep to all things fertility. Another Austin person joining us. Welcome, Brooklyn, Brazil. Wow, love that. Hello. Welcome everyone.
Yes, thank you all for joining us.
Queens, New York, lots of local New Yorkers. I'm here in New York. I think actually we're all here in New York. Is that right?
No, Manal is in LA. So she, during the pandemic, and did IVF with Dr. Brower. Yeah.
Perfect. Toronto. Hello, Toronto. That's wonderful. Great. Well, welcome.
Yeah,
North Oregon.
Started. Are you ready to get started?
Absolutely. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So welcome everyone. We're so happy for you to join us tonight for our Fertility 101. Leading this conversation is our founding physician, OBGYN, Dr. Fahimeh Sasan, who's based in New York, and two of our wonderful, very authentic and brave patients who are both IVF patients, currently both pregnant right now. And we're so happy for them to join us, Manal Mita and Megan Kashal. So thank you guys so much. Oh, the deck just moved. I'm going to give them both a minute here or two to talk, to introduce themselves and share why they're here, why they're excited to share their story with you. Manal, you want to kick it off?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Meenal Mehta. I'm actually based out of LA, newly based out of LA. I used to live in New York City. And I am 29 weeks pregnant, expecting a baby girl in August. And I have so much to be thankful for, but Kind Body in particular was super instrumental to my own success, to be able to even be here in the first place. Prior to this pregnancy, so I did have so I have a son. He's 2.5 years old. And in order to get to the second round of pregnancy, I went through 3 IUIs, 2 rounds of stimulations, 1 egg retrieval, 1 embryo transfer, and finally I'm here. And I count myself as being super, super lucky to be 29 weeks pregnant. So expecting a baby girl. Fun fact about me is I have a needle phobia. It took me a really long time to come around to the idea of going through IVF. So I'm happy to share with you sort of my thought process to get here. And again, very just thankful to be in the position I'm in, and thankful to everyone at Kind Body.
Awesome. And Megan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Kashal. I'm here based out of New York City. I am currently 29 weeks pregnant as well, due August 13th with a baby boy. Thank you to Kind Body. So Dr. Brown as well as Dr. Amy are the wonderful physicians that helped me get to where I am today. Never thought I would be in this position, but very, very, very thankful and blessed. And I'm very excited to share my story with you all. Please reach out to me, and looking forward to the Q&A session later on. But my story, just in a little nutshell here, is that I actually was with another hospital prior to coming to Kind Body, and I just felt like I wasn't being heard as a patient. And so someone had suggested Kind Body, and I felt really comfortable. Obviously, the ambiance of the medical office didn't feel like a medical office, but I just felt like I was kind of at home. And then being able to just share my story and really, really get the advice, and obviously the medical attention from females was just so comforting. And it's been quite a journey. We had done 3 IUIs that failed. My diagnosis was unexplained infertility. And fortunately, I was under good hands and was able to get pregnant this past year. So looking forward to tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Sasan, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. I just wanted to thank both of our amazing patients for sharing their stories. It's really highlights why we're here and what we do, and I think it's so imperatively important to realize that the pregnancy journey is not easy, and that there can be a lot of trials and tribulations and needle phobias and the uncertainty of whether it's going to work, and how important it is to have that connection. And I know Manal's later going to be telling us about her experiences with Dr. Brower and Dr. Brown and Dr. Amy as well. But I'm just, as a founding physician, so touched by the fact that, one, you're both pregnant, and I wish you really boring remainder of your pregnancies. As an OBGYN, that's like the best wish you can give someone, is a boring pregnancy. And we really sincerely can't wait to meet your precious babies. But also thank you for sharing your story, because I think that as a society, we don't talk about fertility problems and women's health issues enough. And as a result, so many women feel alone through this process. So I'm sure your story will resonate with many of the people who are joining us today. So next slide, and we'll get going.
There we go.
So Kindbody is a national network of women's health and fertility practices. So we have currently 8 locations around the country, 2 in New York, 1 in Princeton, New Jersey. We're in downtown San Francisco and Palo Alto, outside of San Francisco. We have a location in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, in Atlanta, Georgia. We'll be opening in Austin, Texas on June 21st, and another location in Orlando, Florida in July, and then Denver shortly after that. And all of our clinics have that same ambiance that Megan was just sharing with you, and really with a focus for improving accessibility for everyone. And regardless of where you are in your journey, whether you're ready to be pregnant now or you're thinking about pregnancy 10 years from now, we really want to help connect patients with their options and to help explore those avenues. And so I'm delighted to be here with you. And so we'll dive in deep into fertility over the next 45 minutes or so. All right, so what we do, this is, we provide a full comprehensive scope of services here at Kindbody. So the entire fertility process, so everything from just curiosity and wanting to learn more about your fertility in the form of an assessment. We do both in-person and virtual consultations, egg freezing, embryo freezing, intrauterine insemination, in vitro fertilization, donor egg, donor sperm, surrogacy. So the entire scope of fertility care and all of the genetic testing that comes with it. We also do the entire scope of gynecologic care, everything from routine GYN exams and pap smears to the entire scope of contraceptions and IUDs and managements of fibroids and abnormal pap smears and PCOS and endometriosis. And also just naturally, if you're thinking about getting pregnant maybe in the next year and just want to make sure everything is fine, we do all of that under the same roof. And then in addition, we have a lot of counseling and support services in the form of nutritionists and mental health. We even have virtual meditation to help you through this process, because we really do recognize that if we only take care of your uterus and vagina, we've colossally failed you, and how important it is for us to take care of you as a whole. And we also have an incredible support system for the LGBTQ community, because we recognize that there can be extra hurdles that you need to cover through donors and surrogacy processes. So we really are a one-stop shop for all of your needs, and we look forward to being a partner in your journey. All right, so why does all this matter? Why are we having a Fertility 101 tonight? And I think the most important thing for us to realize is that as women, and even as men, we spend the majority of our reproductive life trying to not get pregnant, right? And so then when the time comes when we're ready to conceive, we often don't know where to begin. And unfortunately, our education system, our healthcare system doesn't prepare us for that process either. And so a lot of men and women are left lost in this process, where now they're in their 30s, they're in their mid 30s, late 30s, maybe even in their early 40s, and they're ready to have a baby. And we spend our entire lives thinking the moment we have sex, we're going to be pregnant. And then it's shocking when that doesn't happen. And so this conversation is really meant to make that right. All right. So the most important thing to understand is that when it comes to fertility, age matters. And time, unfortunately, is the worst enemy of fertility. And so that's paramountly important to understand, because a lot of times I meet women who say, well, I'm really healthy. I take really good care of myself. I exercise, I eat well, I don't smoke, I don't do any of these things. So I'm going to be fertile. And the thing to understand is that it's not always about how healthy you are, but about how old you are becomes a really important component. So why does this matter? Let's start at the beginning. It's really important to understand that as women, we're born with all the eggs we'll ever have. We have about 2 million eggs at birth, and that's the total capacity. There is no opportunity or ability for a woman to make new eggs. And then sadly, by the time we reach our very first menstrual period, so think in your mind, you were probably somewhere between the age of 9 to 15, we're already down to 300 to 400,000 eggs. So we shockingly lose the majority of our eggs just in that first decade or so of our lives. And then from there, every single month, we lose up to 1,000 eggs. And so if you think about starting at 2 million, by the time you're at your first period, we're already at 300 to 400,000. And every month we're losing 1,000 eggs. Then that's when you suddenly realize why age matters so much. And this is totally unfair. And there's no way to predict a person's fertility. So there's no calculator I can put in to say, oh, based on a mathematical formula, you have this many eggs left. So that's why doing assessments and learning more about your fertility becomes so important. All right, so let's talk about age, right? The most important thing to understand is that while typically, doctors, OBGYNs tell women that your fertility is typically good until the age of 35, and that women over the age of 35 have lower fertility, the most important thing to understand is that those are averages, right? But not everybody's body follows the rules. And 1 out of 10 women will experience premature early low ovarian reserve or a premature decline in their egg count under the age of 35. That's 1 out of 10 women. That's a lot. And you would never know it. This is a silent process. There's no symptoms to it. And so that's why it's so important to never assume that because you're young, your fertility is great. But conversely, also to not assume that just because you're older, you have no options. I think it's really important for everyone to learn your own truth. Base this information on facts, not on worry, not on fear, and not on assumptions. So the other aspect that's really important, so far I've only talked about egg counts declining with age, right? The next thing it's important for us to understand is that our egg quality also declines with age. And by quality, I am strictly referring to the 23 chromosomes that make up the DNA of an egg cell, right? So an egg has 23 chromosomes, a sperm has 23 chromosomes. They come together to make 46, which is what a normal human is. And because we're born with all the eggs we'll ever have, as we age, our cells age. And part of the aging process is the deterioration of those 23 chromosomes. So think about it the same way as your skin, your hair, your body doesn't look the same way as it did when you were born. And as we age, we see signs of aging. Our egg cells are also aging. And that's why it's so important that as women get older, we understand that 2 factors are declining, our egg count and our egg quality. All right. So the most important thing, and I said this before, and I think it's worth repeating again, is you're never too young or too old to learn more about your fertility, to learn more about your own truth, so that you can make the choices that are right for you, right? And that's the most important part, is not that I'm saying everyone should freeze their eggs or that everyone needs to have a baby or anything like that. Not at all. But I think it's so important for all of us, regardless of how young or old we are, to at least do an assessment, learn about our egg counts, learn about our own ovarian potential, so we can then make the decisions that are right for us. So then we can say, okay, I want to have 3 children. I want to have 0 children. I want to have children yesterday. I want to have children in 5 years. And what do I need to do to be proactive and preventative about something that means so much to so many of us, the ability to have a child. So let's get back to like some basics, right? When are we most fertile? How does this all work, right? The most important thing to understand is that we're only fertile for about 5 days a month, right? Again, going back to that whole shock, I'm one of those people that for most of high school and maybe into college was convinced that the moment I had sex, I was going to get pregnant, probably because my mother had embarked that fear upon me. But when you step back for a moment and you realize that you're only fertile for 5 days a month, all of a sudden it becomes clear why people have fertility issues, because then the majority of every month you're actually not fertile. So just to give you guys an example, in this example from March 2021, the red dot would represent the first day of bleeding, the first day of a period. And in this example where a person does have regular menstrual cycles, so let's say a person who has 28 to 30 day menstrual cycle, if the first day of their period is March 1st, you would be most fertile between day 10 and 14 of your cycle. And the other times we're actually not fertile. And that's why people can use this information to either A, use the rhythm method and prevent pregnancy. But conversely, if you're trying to conceive, it's important to know your fertile days, because then those are the times where you want to make sure you're having sex. And then understanding that sperm actually stays in our system for up to 72 hours after we have intercourse. So in this example, if the person had sex on Saturday the 6th, they could still get pregnant because the sperm would still be around on the day of ovulation on the 10th. All right. So what factors impact fertility? I just talked to you about age being really important, but it's also really essential that we understand that our fertility does not work in a silo. It's not just about our ovaries. It's not just about sperm, but that other factors are so vitally important. Smoking cigarettes has been proven to decline fertility in both men and women. So if you need another reason to not smoke, I implore upon you, please do it for your fertility, aside from lung cancer and all of the other harms that it provides. Marijuana smoking too, I know it's a really controversial topic, but there have been some studies to show that excessive marijuana smoking can decline fertility, specifically for men, as it affects their sperm. So important to know those things. Family history is important, but maybe not in the way that you think. Family history in particular for women is important because if you have women in your family, say your mother, aunts, grandmother, who went through early menopause, meaning they stopped getting their period under the age of 45, that puts you at potential risk of also going through early menopause, which means your rate of egg decline could be faster than another woman. So for those of you who maybe don't know how old your mom or grandmother or aunts were when they stopped getting their periods, next time you're together, ask them, how old were you when you went through menopause? Meaning, how old were you when you completely stopped getting your periods? And if they say less than 45, that's another reason to do an assessment. And then no conversation about fertility would be complete without addressing the most really vital, important topic of mental health, and that our stress levels, our emotional health are so vitally important for our body from head to toe, and that we do have therapists and support systems in place if you need that, but can't emphasize enough how important it is to try to reduce the stresses in our lives. And I know that's easier said than done. All right, so what does it mean to be infertile? Infertility actually has definitions. So by definition, a woman who is over the age of 35, so 35 or older, who has been trying to conceive, meaning having unprotected sex for 6 months and has not gotten pregnant, would be considered infertile. For women under the age of 35, if you have been trying to conceive and have not gotten pregnant within 12 months, within a year, that is considered infertile. And 1 out of 8 couples would then meet these definitions of infertility. And then really important for us to understand that 1/3 of couples who have infertility issues, it's actually because of the man. And I know that as women, we often take this burden of infertility solely upon our own shoulders. But I really want to emphasize that if you are listening and you do have a male partner, to please make sure they also have a semen analysis, that they're also assessed, because it does take two aspects to achieve a pregnancy. And then another fundamentally important aspect of this is that while these definitions say a person should wait 6 months if they're over the age of 35 and 12 months if they're under the age of 35, I beg you that not to wait that long, because the sooner you at least get evaluated, one of two things can happen. You can either find out everything is fine and have that peace of mind, or you may find out something is wrong with either you or your male partner if you have one. And the sooner we find out there's an issue, the sooner we can intervene. And typically the more options and the more likely a success story you can have. All right, so at the end of the day, the key is there's no magic formula. There's no way that I could tell you through a virtual Zoom call that you're fertile or that you're not fertile. And the reality is we really have to be evaluated and see where we personally stand. And I know that, I've met a lot of women, through Kindbody and previously, I was at Mount Sinai for 12 years prior to starting Kindbody. I meet a lot of women who say, well, I don't want to go check my fertility. I'm scared to do that. What if I find out something is wrong, right? And I understand that, right? Nobody wants to walk in somewhere and find out, oh my gosh, I have a low egg count, or my husband has a low sperm count, or I have a fertility problem. But the key is that knowing then can lead to solutions, and understanding and having that information can allow us to then explore options, and just kind of ignoring it or being afraid of it actually can make the issue worse. So I really encourage you, don't be afraid. We'll hold your hand through this process, and this information can really be empowering, and the knowledge can be so useful. All right. So what do you do? What is a fertility assessment? What am I talking about, right? So fertility assessment really has 3 parts. Number 1 is a consultation one-on-one with myself, with Dr. Brown and Dr. Amy and Dr. Brower, who our patients were talking about earlier, and our entire team of fertility specialists who would do a one-on-one thorough consultation with you. This consultation can occur either virtually or in our clinic. And it's a very thorough, comprehensive review of your medical history, your surgical history, your family history, your menstrual cycles, and what are your dreams? Do you want kids? Do you not want kids? Do you have a partner? Do you need donor eggs? Do you need donor sperm? Are you in a same-sex relationship? And we need to explore that. So it really allows us to dive in deep into your fertility and understanding your medical history. The second part, if you're in the clinic, all of this happens on the same day. If it's virtual, then obviously you have the virtual consultation, and then we would schedule for you to come in for part 2 and 3. But if you're in the clinic, that same day, you'll have a vaginal ultrasound, which allows us to look at your uterus and ovaries to both see if they're structurally healthy, look for fibroids, look for cysts, but also to count the follicles within the ovaries, which help us tell you about your egg count. And then the third step is we do blood work, specifically a hormone called anti-Müllerian hormone, or AMH for short. And it's the combination of the AMH and the sonogram with the follicle count that can then allow me to objectively tell you, what is your fertility like? Is it great? Is it low? Is it somewhere in between? And then we can factually make decisions together based on what is right for you. And the key is you have options. Let's say you have no dreams of having a kid anytime in the near future. We could talk about egg freezing. Or maybe you already have a partner and you want to have a lot of children and you're interested in embryo freezing, not because you're having difficulty getting pregnant now, but you want to be able to have your 3rd kid or 4th kid when you're 40 or 40 something. That could be an option. Or we can actually talk about fertility treatment in the form of IUI or IVF. IUI is intrauterine insemination. It's the process where you actually take sperm that could be from a partner or from a donor and place it in the uterus to achieve a pregnancy. And IVF is in vitro fertilization, where we actually extract eggs, take sperm, create an embryo in the lab, watch it grow, and then put the embryo back in the uterus to grow. So these are all the options we can help explore with you. So what is egg freezing? Egg freezing is a process by which we're extracting eggs from your body and we're freezing them. So in essence, remember I said that as we age, our egg count and our egg quality declines. Think of egg freezing as an opportunity to take some of your eggs that you're otherwise going to be losing and freezing them. So then you're pressing pause. Once eggs are frozen, they don't die and they don't age. So if you freeze your eggs when you're 32, those eggs will remain 32 forever. Then you could come back and get pregnant with those eggs at 42, and you're almost like cheating the system. You're getting pregnant at 42 with your 32-year-old eggs, which are younger and healthier. So that's what that process is. Who should consider egg freezing, right? Like what's all this about? Like, am I too young? Am I too old? I think the most important thing when you're thinking about egg freezing or just thinking about this topic is to ask yourself these 4 questions. And if you have a partner or a significant member in your life, I would encourage you to answer these yourself, and then talk to your partner about it. The first one's pretty easy. How old are you? The second is, how many kids are in your ideal family? And be honest. And maybe honestly, that answer is 0. Or maybe in your dreams of dreams, you want to have like 4 or 5 kids, right? But honestly answer, how many children are in my ideal family? The third question is, realistically, and this is key, realistically, how old will I be when I have my first child? And then just as important, if you want more than one child, realistically, how old will you be when you have your last child? And I think that how old will you be when you have your last child is a question that we often forget to ask. And it's important for us to understand that, the recommendation, pregnancy itself is almost a year. It's 10 months, 40 weeks. And the recommendation is to wait 1 year from the birth of a child to the start of the next pregnancy. So we do have to account for that. Even someone who gets pregnant back to back, there's going to be a 2-year gap, right? And so think about, how old will you be when you have your second child or your last child? And those are things that we need to take into consideration. And if you're going to be over the age of 35, when you think you'll have your second or first child or last child, then egg freezing is something to consider. All right, so how does it work? I have a fun tissue box analogy I'll share with you guys. Let me grab it. All right, I'm back, sorry. All right, so let me show you guys how egg freezing works. Imagine this tissue box represents your ovaries. So we're all born with 2 ovaries, a right ovary and a left ovary. And within our ovaries, at any given moment of time, we have all the eggs that we'll ever have. Remember at the beginning, I mentioned to you that we're born with all the eggs we'll ever have. Our body cannot make new eggs, right? So when we do a sonogram, remember I told you the first step of a fertility assessment is an ultrasound. We can see your ovaries, but we can't tell how many eggs are in an ovary because eggs are microscopic. So we do a hormone level that's almost like a gauge. So then it would say you're full, you're medium, you're low, all the way down to 0. So that hormone level allows us to tell you how many eggs do you have in total. And then what happens is each month, our body takes a group of eggs from my tissue box, takes a group of our eggs and recruits them, right? And then our brain sends a signal to this group of eggs our body recruited to help one egg fully mature. This one fully mature egg is the only egg in our body that has the capability of becoming a baby. And so in a month where you don't get pregnant or maybe you're not sexually active, this mature egg is lost. This entire group of eggs are lost every month. And next month, your body will go back to your tissue box, back to your ovaries, and recruit another group of eggs. And this process will continue until you run out of eggs. Okay, so that's the natural process. What we do with egg freezing is we say, okay, you have a group of eggs that your body recruited, and we understand that only a mature egg has the capability of becoming a baby. And these eggs are all going to be lost within the next month. So what we do is we give you hormones, the same hormones that allowed this reaction to happen for the one egg to fully mature. We give you hormones at a higher level with the goal of making this entire group of eggs mature together. So that once they're mature, because only mature eggs can become babies, we can extract them and save them for you to use in the future. key things, egg freezing is not stealing from your fertility. So it does not cause premature menopause. It does not harm your ability to get pregnant in the future. All we're doing is taking a group of eggs that would otherwise get lost, and we're helping them mature. Okay, so next slide. All right, and so key things, we're giving you the same hormones that are released by our brains naturally, just at a higher level. That's why the process is actually really well tolerated. And the majority of women will feel some fatigue and a little more bloated than usual, but not some strange, psychotic events or anything like that. You can still function and continue with your normal life. Next slide. All right. And so in the hormone injections, the way that they work is they're stimulating your eggs to mature. So that tissue analogy that I showed you. And the hormones are typically for about 10 days. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you, this is a graphic that kind of walks you through that. So the entire egg freezing process, this process of taking a group of eggs and helping them mature, actually only takes a maximum of 14 days. So on this calendar here, the stop sign would represent if a person's on birth control, when we would advise you to stop your birth control. If you're not on birth control, we would just start with the first day of your period, which is represented by that yellow sign under the Wednesday. And then in this graphic, you would then start your injections on Friday. So if your period starts Wednesday, you're starting your injections on Friday. And you're giving yourself injections, which we'll teach you how to do. We'll hold your hand every step of the way for about 10 to 12 days. You're coming to see us about 4 or 5 times during this process for ultrasound and blood work so we can gauge the maturation of your eggs. Once we see that the majority of your eggs have reached maturity, remember, only mature eggs can become babies, we then do the retrieval, which is done under anesthesia. But many people think that this process actually takes much longer. And then a key point to understand is that whether you're doing egg freezing, embryo freezing, or in vitro fertilization, which is IVF, this process of the injections is exactly the same. So the only difference is in a person who's doing egg freezing, when we extract the eggs on the final days of this process, we take those eggs and freeze them and save them for you to use in the future. And a person who wants to do IVF, the same day we extract the eggs, we fertilize them with sperm. That can be a partner sperm or donor sperm. Create an embryo, watch it grow for a few days. We can do genetic testing, and then we implant the embryo into the uterus. But this initial process is exactly the same. All right. So what's the difference between egg and embryo freezing, right? Some of you may be saying, I've heard that embryo freezing is better than egg freezing, or there's some benefits to embryo freezing. So let me kind of correct some of those misconceptions. There was a period of time, we would say, 10, 15 years ago, when the technology behind egg freezing was not very good. And I'm talking about the national technology behind egg freezing was not very good. And during those times, scientists just did not know how to freeze and thaw eggs well. And so during those periods, embryo freezing was always going to be your best option because we just didn't know how to freeze and thaw eggs well. Fast forward to 2021, our technology for freezing eggs is now equivalent, is just as good as embryo freezing. And so now the playing field is evened. So whether a person freezes eggs or freezes embryos, their outcome is going to be the same. So given the same age woman, so let's pretend it's a 35-year-old woman, if she freezes eggs or she freezes embryos, her outcome is going to be the same. The key thing is that when you make embryos, we're actually taking the egg, fertilizing it with sperm, watching it grow. We can genetically test it. So we end up having more information. It's not that we change the outcome. You just have your information sooner, right? So that's the key difference. And then the other thing to understand is once you create an embryo, we're committed to the sperm, right? We can't unfertilize it. So that's an important thing for people to think about, whether you're in a relationship or with regardless of how long you've been together. Let's be real, sometimes separations happen, divorce happens, things like that happen, and it's just an important thing to keep in mind when you make embryos, that there's no way to unfertilize an embryo. So it's just an important thing to think about as we explore our options. But the success rates are the same with the current technology. So what comes next, right? So we went through this process of freezing eggs or freezing embryos. The key thing to understand is once they're frozen, you're pressing pause. Those eggs or embryos will be just as good as the day they were frozen, even 100 years from now. Now, I'm kidding. Obviously, no one's going to be around 100 years from now, but just to give you the idea or the understanding that they really are good forever. And I don't know if you guys saw, but right in the midst of COVID around the December, there was a baby that was born from a 28-year frozen embryo. So we have the knowledge, we have the information and science to back this up. And then if you do egg freezing, what I always tell my patients is I hope you freeze your eggs as a backup plan, and I hope you never need them. Meaning I hope for every woman that you're able to get pregnant naturally on your own through sex, right? For free. But if that doesn't happen, or if you do want a bigger family, or life gets in the way, or your plans don't turn out the way you thought they would, to have that backup plan for something that's so preciously important for us, as humans, that ability to procreate, the ability to have a child, something that I think is too much to leave to chance. So that's where that benefit can come in. So what is IVF? We talked about it, briefly when we had our calendar up, but the key thing to understand is that it's the same process that you go through to retrieve eggs out of a body, except what we do is once those eggs are retrieved, that same moment, we take sperm, fertilize the egg with the sperm, create an embryo, let it grow for 5 days. On the 5th day, we can biopsy the embryo to see if it's genetically normal. Is it genetically normal? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? Is it affected by any diseases? If you have diseases in your family, we can do all that testing. And then we put one genetically normal embryo back in your uterus to grow. If you have more than one embryo that's genetically normal, we place one embryo one at a time, and the other extra embryos we freeze for you to use later. And that's the key thing to understand is when we have a genetically normal embryo, the success of pregnancy and the success of having a baby 9 months later becomes exponentially great. And that's what our science has proven to us now, is that it's not, which lab you go to, it's not which clinic you go to, it's not which doctor you see. It's the power of doing that genetic testing. And once we have a genetically normal embryo, that maximizes our chances for a successful pregnancy. And that's been well proven. And that's what changed the entire fertility industry and has allowed it to be much more successful and safer than it was years ago. So those stories of people having triplets and quadruplets and octomom and all that are things of the past at this point. All right. But there's lots of paths to parenthood, and I think one of the fears that people have is that, okay, if I can't get pregnant on my own, I'm going to need IVF. Or I don't want to go find out about my fertility because someone's going to tell me I need to have injections and shots, and I don't want to do that, or whatever. Everyone always thinks that the only solution for fertility is IVF. It's the extreme. And what I feel really passionately about and what we do at Kindbody is we really think about this on an individual basis. We understand that not everyone needs IVF, that maybe all you need is to track your periods and to know what are those 5 fertile days for me. And so you could get pregnant on your own naturally, but just with some help of knowing when's the best time to have sex. Or understanding that you may be a woman who wants to have a baby on your own as a single mom, or you may be in a same-sex couple relationship and you need donor egg or donor sperm, or you need a surrogate, either because you have a personal medical issue or because you don't have a uterus. And so those are all things that we can help you, and understanding there's multiple paths and that we really want to be your partner, and understanding what is the right path for you, what's the right timing for you, what are the right options for you, and that it's not always going to be cookie cutter. Oh, you must do this, you need to do that. It's what do you want to do? What is right for you at this time? So what's the next step? I think the most important thing is whether you are actively trying to get pregnant or you are doing everything you can to not get pregnant, whether you think you want to have 5 kids someday, or maybe you already have 1 kid and you're thinking about maybe having another, or you're not sure if you ever want to have kids. The important thing is there's no harm in learning more about your body and coming in and doing an assessment and seeing, what is my egg count? What do my ovaries look like? What does my uterus look like? If you're a man, what's my sperm count? So that then you can make options and choices and timing that makes sense for you, that's based on facts, not fear. So no fertility conversation would be complete without covering cost, right? I know that's one of the things a lot of people get nervous about. So the assessment itself, we accept all major insurances. So sometimes it's just as little as paying your insurance copay. But if you don't have insurance, if you use the code May100, it's only $200. So that would include the assessment and the ultrasound and meeting with the doctor and finding out all this wonderful information. An egg freezing cycle is typically $6,500. And with the May 100 discount, you'll get that for $6,000. That does not include the price of the medication, because the medication is calculated on an individual basis. So we'll be able to tell you all of that when you come. And then an IVF cycle is $12,500. So you do get a $500 discount for that. And then intrauterine insemination is $1,000. Again, all the prices listed are with the code May100. So if I've sparked your curiosity, you can go to kindbody.com right now on your phone or on your computer and go to schedule an appointment and just follow the prompts. And then once you get to May 100 is the discount code. And once you put in the code, we'll honor the discounts for IVF, egg freezing, or insemination for the future. But just putting the code in will secure that for you. We do accept all major insurances on the next slide, just for you to know. So coming to us, whether it's just for GYN and you need a pap smear, or you need a breast exam, or you need an IUD, we do accept all the major insurances. And then we do also accept this insurance for fertility services, and we can help you navigate all of that as well. So when you come in, we can help you explore, what are my benefits? Do I have egg freezing benefits? Do I have IVF benefits? What's covered? What's not covered? This can be a very crazy process. We're here to help you understand your insurance benefits. But coming to us is just like any other doctor's office. So that was the talk. I hope it was helpful. I want to invite back, let's start with Manal. Why don't you just kind of finish up a little bit of your story, and then we'll go to all the questions. I think we have a good 15 minutes. So do you want to share with us a little bit more of your experience and journey?
Yeah, no, totally. I think the rundown you gave of the whole process was super helpful. I think not to sort of toot the horn of Kindbody, but I've always appreciated how damn smart the doctors are. So like the doctors that I worked with, Dr. Amy, Dr. Brown, Dr. Brower, I've just constantly been impressed with, how they keep me informed about the process, how they even talk about it. I will never look at a tissue box the same. But also in going through the process, how incredibly organized the clinic is. And I've had a prior pregnancy working with another OB office, and you're sort of left in the dark about the process. But here it's like you get an entire portal dedicated to you. Everything is like so clearly laid out. And they're very quick about answering any questions you have, and especially the transparency with the pricing. Again, like I did a lot of research with clinics that I wanted to explore, and everything was just super clearly laid out with Kindbody. So I really appreciated that. In terms of like my own experience going through IVF, so I actually went through secondary infertility, which is infertility after you've successfully gotten pregnant, right? This was for my second child. And I really did not anticipate having to go through this, as the doctor had said earlier, that, I had prided myself on being super healthy. I'm really active. I prioritize my mental health. I watch what I eat. And so I was like, oh, I'm never going to be one of those girls that goes through IVF, which is totally a ridiculous way to even think about this whole process. And so after giving birth to my first son, it was very important for me to have kids that were close in age, just for my own like family planning. And so very soon after my son had turned 1, I started, trying to conceive with my husband. And 7 months into the process, this is when COVID just popped up. It was around May 2020. We weren't getting anywhere. I was like approaching this like totally regimented. I was like peeing on those ovulation predictor kits, and I knew when my fertile days were, and it just was not working out. And because I was trying to have kids very close in age, I started to take more of a assertive approach towards that difficulty getting pregnant. So I started seeing Kindbody in New York. And in meeting with Dr. Amy initially, we had talked about this whole like idea of family planning. And I was like, I only want 2 kids. Like, I don't want to do IVF. Like, this is total last resort. I hate needles. Like, let's explore all the other opportunities. And so Dr. Amy had heard me out, and she's like, all right, well, let's go. Let's try these IUIs. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we gotta do something. So we immediately took action. My own diagnosis was unexplained infertility, but it's actually really interesting. As you start to do various medical procedures, you start to learn about how your body is responding to the medical protocol. And so by the second IUI, as I was talking to Dr. Brown, who's also awesome, it became sort of evident that maybe I had diminishing ovarian reserves. And so that sort of helped me cross the line when it came to finally pursuing IVF, as I had not been successful with that IUI. And my story with IVF was I actually was able to transfer offices from New York City to Los Angeles and start working with Dr. Meredith Brower. And the reason I made that transfer was I have family in Los Angeles, and I really wanted to be close to them and have their support as I was going through something that was like emotionally and physically difficult on my body. And Kindbody was able to make that transition totally smooth for me. I didn't lose any time. I was able to start IVF right away. The other thing that was really interesting for me to learn is that you have to sort of set expectations going into your various medical protocols. For me, I did 2 rounds of stims because my first round didn't successfully yield a good amount of eggs to be retrieved. And so that was something that surprised me, that, many women actually go through IVF multiple times. But it was, again, you learn more about how your body responds to the protocol. Dr. Brower was super smart about, changing up the protocol and responding accordingly. And the second time we did the retrieval, we got 1 normal embryo, which successfully implanted. And I can't tell you how lucky I feel to be in this position now. So it's a lot to go through. You don't think you're ever going to be that woman who has to go through IVF, but I assure you, there's nothing wrong with being that woman going through IVF. Like, there are so many of us out there who seek that additional help. We're all here to support each other. And I would say just be proactive and go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a few questions for you, but Megan, I want you to share your story first, because I think some of these questions will go for both of you. So if you want to take it over from here.
Yeah, sure. So my husband and I, prior to getting married, we had been together for about 5 years. And so we had planned that once we, were finally tied the knot, we would start planning to have a family. And so just like, what was stated earlier in this conversation is that I too, I'm very healthy, active, I'm physically fit, I love to work out. My husband, same thing, drink in moderation. I just thought that, okay, my sisters, my mom, all the women in my family got pregnant really quickly. So no biggie for me as well. And I would say after the first 3 months of trying and it not being successful is when I realized like, okay, something's up, but I'll continue to do it, naturally. And then eventually around like the 6-month mark is when I decided that maybe I should just go and get an opinion from a medical professional. At that time I was, 32, almost 33 years old. So I figured, due to my age, I should definitely just get assessed. And like I said, I was somewhere else and was not having the best experience. And that's when I decided to come to Kindbody and just had a really wonderful experience from the start. And I will say though, getting the diagnosis of unexplained infertility was really frustrating just because it's like, we don't know what's going on with, your body. So it was really discouraging, but I think it's just really important to stay positive. It is hard. This is obviously a very emotional journey. And until you're in this position, do you understand what this all entails? I have friends and family members that have gone through the IVF and IUI process, but never did I realize, what a struggle it can be, and that it's not easy. Growing up, I always thought that, okay, if someone went through IVF, you get pregnant right away. But as we all know, that's not the case. For me, I was in denial when I realized after the third IUI that it was time to start IVF. Denial, but also, the fact of like my body failed me, which was really upsetting. And I lost a lot of sleep, at night, like, why me? Why is this happening? And then I realized, okay, it's time to start the IVF process. And that's when COVID happened. And so we were supposed to start in March. And then obviously all of the elective cases were shut down. And I was really upset because for me, I'll be 36 in September. So at the time I was 35 and I just was, on this timeline of, okay, I want to have a child. I want to get pregnant. What if I don't get pregnant on the first round? And I would like to have at least one more. So there was a lot of stress during that time period. But once elective cases were resumed, we started in July. And fortunately, in my case, I was actually successful with the first round. It was definitely a process though, because there were delays. Prior to the transfer, they found a few cysts that need to be removed. And that was after the stim process. And then when we were ready to do the transfer, there was another water stack on my uterus. And so I had to wait for my period to start again. And it was just really discouraging. But at the time I was so upset because I just wanted to get the transfer done. But now kind of looking back on it, I realized everything just happens for a reason. I think there was a lot of personal things that were happening in my life that I don't think I would have been ready for the transfer. And who knows, maybe it wouldn't have been successful. But when I ended up doing the transfer in November of 2020, things were looking good professionally and personally. And, we got the good news, but I think it was 9 or 10 days post-transfer by Dr. Amy. And the one thing too that I will stress, just being, I'm first generation Indian. And so I had a really good support system. So my entire family knew what I was going through. And I think that really helped out a lot. And I know that there are a lot of women out there that may feel, I don't know if this is the right word, but embarrassed. I did initially, that my body's failing me. Who can I talk to? Because it's a really lonely process. And I will say, stress, talk to somebody, whether it's your friends that have gone through IVF, if you can speak to your family members, especially your immediate family members. It's just really important. And as well as having the support from your partner as well. My husband was awesome. Like, honestly, I am in the medical field. I did not want to administer the injections on my own, the shots. My husband helped me out, and I think that was key as well. So yeah, it was definitely a journey, but don't be afraid because it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Thank you. So interesting that you say you didn't want to give yourself the shots, because I think you both can attest to that. If you check our most recent Instagram post, Minal shared this wonderful video. So she didn't give herself any of her shots. Actually, when she moved to LA, were you living with your parents or close to your parents? I don't know, but she didn't give herself any of her shots. It was all of her family members, and her son kicks off the video so adorably, how her baby's made. And then it's shots. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. So please check that out. But if you want to talk a little bit about how interesting, we had a lot of questions, but how can your family support you through this process? Especially if you are have a needle phobia.
Yeah, I'm like a total chicken when it comes to needles. Like I've always been, I never look at the shot. And that was part of my, not wanting to do IVF, was like, I just could not see myself giving myself shots in my stomach. It was just, I was having nightmares, literally nightmares. Even when I started considering it, I remember breaking down in tears, and I was, I just felt like such a chicken. And even when I did my IUIs, I actually walked to the Kindbody office in New York and had them give me my trigger shots. Like that's how much of a phobia I had. So, I mean, my family, we're super close. I tell them, they knew that I was having difficulty getting pregnant, and they were there to support me at every step of the way. My family works in medicine. So, my father's a doctor, my mother's a nurse, my brother and sister are doctors. And so I felt very comfortable coming home literally to have them administer the shots for me. And that kind of family support was tremendous, but also, I needed the support during COVID to help me take care of my son while I was going to go through something that was physically and emotionally taxing for me. So I came home so that my son could be taken care of, and then also I could be taken care of. My mother could cook for me. My dad was literally giving me the shots, and my husband was like, driving me to Santa Monica to go see the doctors. And that, I say that, for me, it took a village to actually create this child. Like it's not, the child isn't even born yet. Yes, it'll take a village to raise the child, but it really, I don't think I could have done it without everyone's support to help me get there.
Yeah, Megan.
I do see actually a question on the side just about if I had my embryos genetically tested. Is it okay if I answer that question?
Yeah.
I actually feel like there's so much to talk about, and I did want to bring that up. So yeah, so I actually first had a SEMA for Dr. Sasan, right, which is just testing to see if I'm a carrier for any type of
diseases.
Diseases, yeah, which I was for some very random disease. So then my husband got tested for it, and he obviously was not a carrier for that. So that was great. So we did that. And then to increase my success rate with the transfer, we did do the genetic testing on the embryos. So I think at the time of the egg retrieval, it was like 24, which then like you just kind of cut that in half. So then at 5 embryos made it to day 5. And out of those 5, after being tested, 1 was good, which is the one that's now going to be born in August. The other one is inconclusive. So I believe that just means that there was not enough
tissue. There's not enough genetic tissue to make a definitive diagnosis, which can sometimes happen. And in those cases, we would counsel you if you wanted to rebiopsy. But yeah, I know we're over time, and it's a testament to what an important topic this is when an hour into it, everyone's still here. I did see a couple of the questions I did want to answer, and I thank you both so sincerely from the bottom of my heart for sharing your stories. I think you sharing your story becomes so much more impactful than me sharing it, because it's really the patient journey and the experience that becomes so important. For the questions you guys asked about symptoms, truly the symptoms, whether you're going through egg freezing or IVF, are bloating, feeling a little more tired than usual, and then some cramping on the day of the retrieval. But it is not associated with psychosocial, emotional changes. Now, this process itself can be emotional, as both of our guests mentioned, but it's not that the medicine triggers some emotional spark. It's just that it is emotional in itself. And it's really well tolerated. So no one would know you were going through it unless you told them. So, if you are in a busy workforce or have something going on, or this is something you want to keep more private, it's not like you look sick or feel sick or have to stay away from work or home in any capacity. So it is really well tolerated. Another question that I saw was, if someone is doing egg freezing, what's the ideal number of eggs? So in women who are under the age of 35, the rule of thumb is we want 10 eggs for the improved chance of one baby. And then if we have embryos, we want 1 to 2 genetically normal embryos will give us a really high success chance for a baby. But for eggs, it's 10 eggs for the improved chance of one baby up until the age of 35. And for embryos, if they're genetically normal, 2 genetically normal embryos gives a significantly good chance of a baby. And we can help you guys explore all of that on a one-on-one basis based on your age and all of that when you come in for your assessment. Amanda Lynn, is there any other questions that you saw that we should answer before?
I think we hit everything, but I just want to thank you all for sharing your stories, sharing your experience with Kindbody. I think as it's a testament to both of you, or you guys know, it's a testament that as we continue to share these stories and share our experiences, that every woman will feel more empowered to make decisions about their body and about their family. And it's nothing against you if you are struggling in this way. So thank you both so much. We are so excited for your babies to come, and hopefully they'll have a chance to meet and they can talk about their moms meeting at this event, and they'll be good friends. So excited for these Kindbody babies to come in August, and congratulations you both. And thank you everyone. If there are any more questions, please reach out, navigator@kindbody.com, and we can address them there. And please go check out our most recent video on Instagram. So it's really fun, and get a sneak peek into the process of IVF.
And then just go to kindbody.com if you're interested in making an appointment with us. Again, this knowledge can be empowering. If you're nervous, we'll be there to hold your hand every step of the way. And that information is worth having. The sooner you get it, the more options you will have. And that's at kindbody.com. And then use that promo code May100 to get the discounts. Thank you guys. Have a good evening and have a good Memorial Day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you all.